All right, I know we usually do the random question first, but because my brother isn't here, Fresh isn't here today, I'm joined by two very special members of the Off the Ball Network. That's Stephen Gillaspie, aka Stevie Wonder, and Egg over at New Cape
Nice.
City. So first I'll get started. Up, Egg has dropped out for a moment. Maybe he'll come back in a second. But so Stephen, who was your favorite basketball player to watch growing up? Like, what player made you like, oh yeah, I like basketball?
Oh man, so this answer is many-fold, but just to kind of keep it short and sweet, Steve Nash was a big influence on my game. I love the Suns because they had my guy Joe Johnson. I'm from Arkansas, so a big ISO Joe fan. I watched them because of Joe, but I felt like I could play more like Steve Nash, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying that Nash wasn't a great player. Like, he's probably one of the most slandered MVPs ever. But big fan of Steve Nash. I love how his game was good individually, but it also made his team better. And plus, it was fun to watch. You know, it wasn't just, your John Stockton bounce passes or whatever. Steve Nash a little bit behind the back, the wraparound passes and stuff like that. 50, 40, 90 type player too. So just efficient, just smart, fun to watch. And yeah, man, Steve Nash, a big influence on how I try to play basketball.
No, definitely. Megan, since you're back with us, I know you're a Knicks fan, so it's gonna be a Knicks player. But who was your favorite player to watch that like got you into basketball?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't really think, to be honest, I don't really think any one player got me to play basketball.
That's fair.
It was just I used to play soccer growing up all the time because I grew up in Ecuador. So over there, soccer is obviously huge. Everybody plays soccer.
Mm-hmm.
There was barely any basketball. There were some basketball courts here and there, maybe like one or two, but nobody really played it. Nobody really watched it when I was growing up. So when I moved back over here to the States, when I was around 12 or 13, that's when I saw everybody playing basketball. It was a basketball court in every single corner, like basketball court here, basketball court over there. But growing up in Ecuador, I did watch some games, like I watched the Knicks because my parents were Knicks fans, and I watched Jordan's last game over there, like with the Bulls and whatnot. Right. But really, what got me to play basketball was just seeing everybody here playing it, in the city, friends at school and whatnot. That's when I stopped playing soccer, and I was just like, okay, basketball is pretty fun. Let me play. Then I really got into watching it even more.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense, especially like say as a kid when you see everybody else doing, it's like, okay, maybe that's what I need to be doing too. That's how I can make friends, honestly. Like that's
right. I mean, was it fun watching the Knicks growing up because my parents did have me watching them? Yeah. Was it fun watching Jordan and all those guys? Yeah, but like I don't want to say like they got me to play it. It was just more so because I saw everybody else around me playing it that got me into it.
Nah, yeah, that's a good answer. I like that. I like that answer.
I like that.
All right, so the NBA Finals between the Phoenix Suns and Milwaukee Bucks is tied at 2-2. Of course, both teams did what they're supposed to do, holding down their side of home court advantage. The Milwaukee Bucks picked up a late victory in Game 4, where they weren't necessarily struggling on offense, but they couldn't find any offensive rhythm to keep consistent buckets going until late in the game when they kind of let Kris Middelton and Giannis work more of the pick and roll and kind of let Jrue Holiday just take on more of the defensive assignments and kind of took him out of the game a little bit. And I think Bobby Portis throwing in that fourth quarter for Brook Lopez was a great adjustment first and foremost before we get into our thoughts of the game. So shout out to Coach Bud, who everybody in the world gets on about not making adjustments, and he finally made a great adjustment that won that game. So I want to start with you, Steven. Just looking back at Game 4, what was the difference to you for Milwaukee picking up that victory?
Well, first off, man, hats off to you because I was recently on, another Off the Ball Network show, Bunts and Bruises, with our guys Bars and Jerg. And I actually said that Bud had been making adjustments. They're just not like the wholesale adjustments that I guess everyone's expecting, because when you only play 8 players, there's only so much you can do. And I said earlier on in the season that I could see Bobby Portis playing an integral role, probably even replacing Brooke Lopez in the starting lineup. It didn't happen up until, clutch moments of this last game. But still, I mean, there's a logic to where you could see that swapping those two out can open things up. And you mentioned that Game 4 was huge, man. We're going to talk a lot about Giannis and Kris, I'm sure, and how dynamic they are as a duo. I think, though, that the unsung hero so far of these finals have been PJ Tucker. And he's not really doing anything flashy or sexy. Our buddy Jeff Hunt, we were actually talking to him. It was me, Jeff, and Pat speaking. And Jeff mentioned the scoring, and I was just, I love Jeff, and I was just like, hey, bud, Game 3 is not a victory without PJ Tucker's hustle plays. Offensive rebounds, especially in the finals, are huge. Anytime you can get an extra possession, that helps out a lot. He was basically the juice that got that Game 3 started for them. Very important. But back to Game 4, we saw the adjustments that you had mentioned. I also mentioned on Bunts and Bruises that the pick and roll where Giannis is not the ball handler, I think puts everybody in their ideal situation, because when Giannis is the screener and the smaller guy is switched on to him, he's in a better spot to where a small guy is on him closer to the basket as opposed to away from the basket. And Kris Middelton has a bigger dude that, although Kris isn't like the best ball handler or shot creator off the bounce, he's in a better situation where he's on the perimeter, typically against a larger defender. So it puts the pick and roll ball handler and the screener in ideal situations when you have Giannis running as the screener as opposed to being a ball handler, sharing that time with another big. And I think that that's an area that Coach Bud has emphasized in the last 2 victories. And, them being victories, it's obviously working out for him, man.
All right, definitely. And even not just the scoring aspect of it, but Giannis coming off that, and the defense has to collapse on him now. He can kick out and find open shooters, and they can get the ball rotating and get some of those open threes they want for Pat Connaughton and PJ Tucker in the corner is also what comes out of that pick and roll. And Edgar, you the same question. What was the difference in that win for Milwaukee in Game 4? Mike's not on, Edgar.
Yeah, Edgar, you're muted, bro. I don't know. Edgar, can you hear us, bro? You're muted.
You muted, Edgar. Uh-oh.
I think we lost him, man.
Yeah. So, while we wait for Edgar to come back, moving on and just get back into more thoughts about Game 4. Because, like I say, Milwaukee really couldn't gain any momentum in that, just for the first 3 quarters offensively, where they were. DeAndre Ayton has been great this whole playoff series, and while you're not going to stop Giannis averaging 32 in the finals, but he's been good and effective against him and stopping some of that lane driving, even shot blocking and altering shots at the rim. All right, we good to go, Edgar?
I don't understand. My Wi-Fi is killing me right now. Man. It's like it's plotting against me.
It's 2021 still having those same issues, man. They got to fix the Wi-Fi worldwide.
Bro, yeah, Spectrum, man. Spectrum is giving me all sorts of problems, man.
It's all good. We're going to get that deal where everybody getting an Xfinity contract, and we just going to have Xfinity Wi-Fi worldwide.
There we go.
But, Edgar, what's your thoughts on that Game 4 victory for Milwaukee?
I thought I was talking to JP about this the other day. The biggest adjustment was Bobby Portis. I think I've been calling for that since the series started. I think having him play alongside Giannis is a better option right now than having Brooke out there. No disrespect to Brooke, because he's been one of the key reasons why they've been a good team as well. So not trying to take any credit away from him, but he's just at a weird spot right now where he's not that mobile on defense to be able to be switching onto Chris Paul and Devin Booker so many times. I mean, we've been seeing since the series started, it's been a pick on Brooke type of thing on defense, right? It's like it's not even a pick and roll, a pick and pop. It's pick on Brook. It's like, all right, have Chris Paul and Devin Booker come at top of the key, set a screen, and get that switch, and just basically just pick on him. Like dribble, cross him up real quick, maybe take a step back or get all the way to the basket or hit a mid-range shot on him or draw a foul.
All right, definitely.
And that's just not really his fault because he's not that type of guy who has quick feet on defense and he'll be able to, keep up with them. It's not his fault. It's not fair to really put him in that position. So obviously the change would be to have Portis come in, either start in place of him or maybe get more minutes. And now Bobby Portis is not like some world-renowned defender, but at least he can move. Right. He's not like, oh my God, like he's going to lock up somebody as soon as he starts guarding him. But the thing that he does have is quickness, like lateral quickness, and he can move his feet better than Brook Lopez can. And he can also hit the three. So not only does that help on defense with the switching, like at least you can try to maybe contain Paul and Booker on those screens to a degree, make it a little easier. Right. But it also helps on offense because he can also hit the three, and he's pretty relentless when it comes to like getting offensive boards and things like that. So that's one of the biggest takeaways I got from the game. Like you said, Coach Bud is making those adjustments. Like I know people like to kill him for that. I even killed him in the Brooklyn series because I was like, yo, Coach Bud doesn't really have it looks like he doesn't have many offensive sets for the Bucks out there. Yep. But he's been making the adjustments so far in these finals. And it's working. Like we saw what happened to the last two games. They won. So
and just real quick, I know that we just talked about, the Portis for Lopez thing. The one thing I will say for Lopez and Edgar, hats off to you for giving credit to a player without killing another. So many people are guilty of that. And I know that on off the ball, we don't really practice that. But I know Brook Lopez, here's two things I will say for him, why I understand why he is starting. One, he's been giving them like 14 a game. So that's huge in of itself, especially when we were just talking about how scoring up until late in the game was kind of at a premium for Milwaukee, right? So he's giving you 14 a game. But on the other side of that, too, is where he's giving you defensive limitations on, say, a switch. I don't know how Bobby Portis would hold up in the paint guarding DeAndre Ayton because Lopez he's slow, but he's big. He's a big body that you can put on DeAndre Ayton. And we saw that he was held under double-digit scoring, too. So it's kind of a catch-22 where you got to focus on the strength of both players and try to find the spots in the game where you can put them in there and it worked for the benefit of your team, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, it definitely makes sense. Like, because you need him out of because, like, DeAndre Ayton is going to hit the boards and he's going to hit them hard. So you need Brook Lopez to kind of counter that, but you need Bobby Portis in those pick-and-roll situations. Like I say, he's not going to lock him down or stop him, but he's still long and he's athletic and he's quick enough to where he can contest some shots or at least stay in front of him for a while until the help defender gets there. And I think that's all you can ask for from a big man trying to defend players like Devin Booker and Chris Paul in open space like that, especially Chris Paul, who we know is a master in the pick and roll. And just speaking of Chris Paul real quick, I know he had a bad game but it doesn't change the phenomenal playoffs he's had this far along in the playoffs. Like, it happens. I know I get on him about this because he does have these games in the playoffs where it's kind of like, all right, why are you turning the ball over so much? But he has been great up to this point, and I do want to give him that credit as well before people start killing him about one bad game, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, we just saw Devin Booker the night before have a bad game, and like Twitter was quiet. You know what I mean? Like nobody killed Devin Booker because it was hats off to him for up until that point. He was having a phenomenal entire playoffs, right? So Chris Paul, you're kind of, I'm not surprised that he's having a couple off games because, John, you mentioned that he has had moments like this in the playoffs and, he's having extra games. This is the longest season he's ever had, even though it's been a shortened regular season, this has been the longest cumulative season that he's ever had. And he's 36 years old, man. So like, he can only be expected to do so much. He is making winning plays. I know that people only want to focus on points, rebounds, and assists, but there's so much more to basketball than that. If you play basketball, you understand what I'm saying. And Chris Paul, he's a floor general. He does all the right things. Promise you, Phoenix not where they're is not where they are right now without him. So I know that we live in a world of extremes. And what have you done for me lately? Right now, Chris Paul is like the most overrated point guard ever, right? Based off of this Game 4 performance. But, the first couple games in the playoffs up until this point, he's top 3-point guard of all time. So, we got to live in that, it's not level 1 or 10, there's a 2 through 9 that we can live in, and it adjusts, game by game.
There you go. I definitely agree with that. And speaking of Game 4, I want to talk about one of the more monumental plays in that kind of changed that whole game and could change the series if Milwaukee could kind of hold on to that momentum. And that was Giannis getting that late block on DeAndre Ayton off alley-oop. But you don't really see players go and try to defend that play because, you don't want to get fouled. You don't want to give up a foul, or you don't want to get dunked on and give up a foul in that situation. But Giannis being the player that he is, who's consistently playing as hard as possible and always trying to make that extra play, goes and make the play. And that kind of gets them the victory, honestly. And, of course, everybody's already, putting it as the moment or the block. That's been the thing for the last couple of days. Everybody's so quick to throw it in front of the LeBron Game 7 block like it didn't even happen. But it's a great block. And as me and you were saying yesterday on Twitter, Stephen, like, anything under the sun you want to call it that's positive, call it that. It's not the moment yet for Giannis. He's only 26. He has 2 MVPs and a Defensive Player of the Year, and his career is nowhere close to being over. But just speaking of the blocks in terms to how it relates to this series, what is that going to do with Phoenix and how they're going to kind of approach attacking Giannis at the rim now, just attacking the rim in general? Because we see, like last year with Bam on Jason Tatum, where Jason Tatum was kind of reluctant to drive to the basket after that. Do you think Phoenix is going to fall into that same kind of mind trap? We're going to start with you on this one, Edgar.
No, I don't think so. I don't think they're really going to change anything. It was one play. I mean, it was one hell of a play. Let me say this: if they do end up winning the finals, that's the play.
Right.
I know you said that he has a long career ahead of him, but they win it all, and that play ends up being one of his top 3 ever.
I agree with that. That's a good. I agree with that though.
If they win, if they lose, then it's just like, oh, okay, cool play. It happened. Really good play.
Cool play, bro.
Like I don't mean it like we're just throw it out, but it's not gonna be remembered as like like if they would win.
No, I agree with that.
I don't think Phoenix really changes that the way that Giannis is playing there though. It's like I said, it's one play to them. It's probably like, okay, it happened. Let's throw it out. Let's forget about it. He's gonna get a crazy block here and there. I mean, he's bound to. He's like 7 feet tall. His wingspan is crazy, so he's bound to have at least one of those a game, maybe 2. But I don't think it switches anything. Even so, if you look at the entire play, though, Devin Booker's pass was kind of off there for Ayton, so it made it even a bit harder to catch. So I think they stay the same on offense. It's not really it's not something they're going to lose sleep over. They still got 2 games. They still got games left. So
I agree with that. It's going to definitely be a big play on his resume, and it could be the play if they do end up winning the series. But like I say, if they don't win, it is just a cool play that happened in the series, though. Steven, what about you? How do you think Phoenix is going to approach attacking Giannis on the rim after that?
I mean, you have Chris Paul, who call him whatever you want, but we understand that the pick and roll is a heavy part of his diet, right? We've seen him make an entire career off of plays like this with guys like David West, Tyson Chandler, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan. Now we're seeing it with DeAndre Ayton. He's got to have a dynamic role, man. And then 2, Devin Booker learning from Chris Paul, right? I mean, we're seeing a huge jump in his level of production. We know about the buckets, but here, look at what happened. Devin Booker's attacking the basket, recognizing that there are 4 Milwaukee Bucks converging on him at this moment. And, I don't know if he's looking for a bailout or if this is a heavy basketball IQ play where you recognize that your big man is rolling to the basket and it's not a bad play to go to. It just so happens that one of the best defenders in the NBA is standing in the paint too, and that's something that you got to recognize. I mean, John, you pointed to his age earlier. This is something that in his young NBA career, talking of Devin Booker, he's going to learn from this. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't the end of, his entire run. He might not have thrown the best ball, but it was probably the right basketball play, and then we also in the same mindset, we got to give credit to Giannis Antetokounmpo, because John, you mentioned how many guys would have given up on that play, not wanting to get on a poster. I mean, if you're a defender, you're going to get embarrassed every once in a while, especially with the way that the NBA is officiated nowadays. You can't be afraid to play defense and be made to look bad. I mean, PJ Tucker probably got yammed on by just, Cam Johnson a couple games ago, and he's just a jump shooter, and PJ Tucker gets ducked on. But guess what? PJ Tucker just puts his, sneakers back on and gets back to work. And Giannis is doing the same thing here. How many NBA defenders could go from covering the dude who threw the oop, turn to the other shoulder, take a couple steps, jump up, and block the recipient of the alley-oop, all in just a matter of like maybe 2 seconds? Like, that's just unworldly. And we've had people criticize Giannis Antetokounmpo for not really having an NBA basketball skill set. Right. I don't know how many players in today's NBA, one, would want to, and then two, even if they did want to, could go from defending the person throwing the alley-oop, and then the dude catching the alley-oop and still block them, all in just a matter of a couple seconds.
And not foul him.
And not foul him. That's the most important.
He had to have perfect timing there for that. But speaking to your fact, like, I mean, you just, when you're a defender like that, when you want to defend, you can't worry about what people are going to say and what videos are going to be put on and jokes and all that. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen, but there's a video of Giannis one time in practice is joking around with PJ Tucker, saying like, I've seen it all. Like, I don't shot air balls in game sevens, air balls in preseason games. I've been dunked on. I've been crossed. I've been everything. There's nothing anybody could do to embarrass me, And he was having a laugh about it.
I love that mindset too, by the way, man. The Giannis, John, we were talking about before we hit the air that how many dudes could come back off a hyperextended left knee, play the next series, and then have an off night but still give you 20 and 17.
Nobody. Not nobody, but it's very few that would even be willing to do that.
This was his knee. His knee was like this.
No, definitely, like, that was a bad play. And I just want to get back to something that Stephen said real quick about that Cam Johnson on PJ Tucker dunk. Whereas that looked like that was going to be the play that kind of sealed it for Phoenix and kind of win the series. But we see how that changes from game to game, and you can never count on momentum staying with one player, staying with one team or one player, because that Cam Johnson dunk at the time basically just destroyed the internet for that whole night. Cam Johnson was also playing good that night as well, so that topped it off. But Cam Johnson, he had to play in the finals, and then Giannis come back and get this block, and it's like, okay, now everybody's picking Milwaukee in 6. I know you already had that, Steven. I still got Phoenix in 6 because Milwaukee needed to win 2 games, but we don't know how it's going to slide now because of that.
First team that wins on the road is basically going to be the winner. And John, I just want to point out something real quick that with a jump shooter, right? I don't know y'all's game. I don't know if y'all are shooters. The saying shooters shoot. It doesn't, you forget about your, first 50 misses and you hit one, you forget all about it. You know what I mean? Like, defenders are the same way. If you get crossed on to the next play, you get dunked on, you're on to the next play. Credit to PJ Tucker for not really, for him just having an impact on the game without, having 40-point performances like we're seeing on opposite ends of the ball for both teams with different players.
All right. No, yeah, definitely. He definitely impacts the game in his own way. And that's mostly defensive and hustle plays. And every now and then the occasional corner 3, which does help this offense a lot. And just speaking of this offense, I want to get into the 2 most important players for Milwaukee's offense, and that's the 1-2 punch of Kris Middelton and Giannis Antetokounmpo, who I know their games are very different, which helps them because now they're not in the same space. But the way their games get looked at is what I don't really appreciate, honestly. And that's starting with Kendrick Perkins, who I know is watching right now.
What's up, Perk?
Like, give Kris Middelton all the respect in the world for what he did in Game 4, because that's what he could have done, and that's what he's expected to do on this level as that type of player. But we can't throw away what Giannis has been doing, back-to-back 40-point games, 40-point, 30-point triple-doubles. Like, you just can't do that. They're not they don't have to be Batman or Robin. It doesn't have to be a hero on the sidekick. It can just be two great players, which these two players are. They're great players, and they're playing great right now. And like I say, the way that Bud is using them in that pick and roll, which you brought up, Stephen, is magnificent, and it is the best offense for them. How do you see them? I know they basically been in Milwaukee their whole careers together, and they fought for minutes and fought for rotation spots. But just seeing their relationship on the court develop is amazing. And Stephen, I want to go to you first. Do you think Milwaukee they just love the fact that they're a small market team, but they have these two players who they've grown as a 1-2 punch, and probably one of the better 1-2 punches in the NBA? How do you think Milwaukee is feeling about that right now? Just the benefits they're going to reap for that.
I mean, you're seeing the benefits that they're reaping right now. They're in the NBA Finals, and I mean, obviously Milwaukee's got to love it, because Milwaukee is not the sexiest NBA market, or NBA sports. I mean, they even got, they're competing against the Packers, and the Packers have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and they can't do anything. Well, here on the Bucks, you have probably two of the most overlooked players in the NBA, respective to where their peers are at the same level, right? And what I mean by that is Giannis is an NBA superstar, but we have people who get paid money to talk basketball that say that he's not. Kris Middelton is an important player on this team. He is a second best player on an NBA team, but we have people who are paid to talk basketball and say that they're not. So think of the dichotomy that Milwaukee has right now. They have an NBA, like they have an NFL team with one of the best quarterbacks to ever play, and they're losing in the playoffs. Meanwhile, the Bucks have two of the most overlooked players on their basketball team. They're in the NBA Finals. So Milwaukee's got to be loving this right now. I love the relationship between Giannis and Kris. I think that it's important to note what you just said, John, is like, it doesn't have to be Batman and Robin. It's like, hey, you got it tonight. Let's get you the ball. I'm still going to put in my work. I'm still going to do all the things that I'm good at, even if my shot's not falling. We saw that with Giannis. We've seen it with Kris. And, that we've had games where Giannis is putting up 40 and Kris is giving you 20. And then this last game in Game 4, Kris is giving you 40 and Giannis is giving you 20, but they're still being impactful on both ends of the ball. That's the important aspect. Is Kris Middelton is a great defender. Obviously, we just talked about the block that Giannis puts up. He's a tremendous defender. I think that their relationship goes like this. Giannis is the best player. In clutch situation, Kris is the most important player on the offensive end. If Kris is giving you significant boosts in clutch moments, shooting or handling or passing the ball, that's a win. Giannis is going to do everything to get you to that point to where Kris has to get to that level. I actually wrote an article that I have caught up on my other monitor here. I wrote this December 27th of 2020. Okay. And I wrote here that if I were to compete in a fantasy draft and I could select any player, I would certainly choose Giannis over Middelton. That's certainly a no-brainer. However, if you're asking me who the better player on a team or who is the better player on a team, that's a different question. Even still, Giannis may be the answer, but it isn't as open and shut as others may think. Giannis is a player unlike anything we've ever seen, and that makes him hard to judge, right? But Kris is so important to this team, man. He's probably one of the most important players in the NBA because he's on this team. Not saying that he is the best player or one of the best players in the NBA, but he certainly plays a vital role on this team, and we're seeing in these finals.
Definitely. And Edgar, how about you? How do you feel about the relationship, the on-court relationship between Kris Middelton and Giannis?
I think it's a great relationship. Both of them seem like they're really good friends on the court. I mean, I don't know about off the court because I've never seen them off the court, but I could generally say that off the court they probably get along pretty well. I love that there's no ego between either one of them. Like, they both mutually respect each other. They respect the fact that they both bring different skill sets to the table when it comes to playing. Like, I know Kris probably thinks like, hey, Giannis is the best player on the team. talent-wise, and he does all these crazy and amazing things. Like he blocks shots left and right. Like he plays some great defense. He takes these long strides to the basket and things like that. And I know Giannis probably thinks like, hey, you know what? I might not be the closer on this team. Like that role goes to Kris because he knows how to do it when it's time to get clutch buckets and the clock hits like 10 seconds and we need a go-to scorer. And I'm sure Giannis truly appreciates him for that. Like there's no egos between them. You never hear anything in the media saying like, oh, hey, Giannis seems like he's jealous because Kris gets to take the last shots on most games. Or you never hear things about Kris saying, "Oh, well, all the spotlight goes to Giannis, even though I'm the clutch player on the team." You know, that's one of the biggest takeaways for me. It's like there's no egos, and they work so well with each other, and that doesn't create problems for the team. Uh, Otherwise, you know.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with that. They definitely play without egos on the court, where they both let each other shine in the areas that they're best at. And I think that's the best way for these relationships to work, honestly. And every now and then they're gonna be egos because we're getting paid this amount of money and we're all getting accolades and we all want to do it. But when you have players, when your two best players can play on the court without an ego and in the flow of a game, it's going to be tough to beat for another team because they know when to give it to the other player and they know when it's their time to shine and they don't mind taking that step back. And real quick, shout out to my brother for stepping into the comments. He say he appreciate y'all for stepping in for him. Definitely.
Hey, Mr. Fresh, man. Big shoes to fill, bro.
Egg, I know he definitely appreciates you being here with all the back and forth we had with Knicks and Hawks playoff series.
Yeah, don't worry. We're coming for the Hawks next season.
Oh, definitely, man. I hope we do get y'all again next year, man. That was fun this year. But just stay on this year and get into Game 5 real quick, which is coming up. And like I say, we've seen both teams take care of their home court advantage in the first 4 games, Stephen, as you and the world knows. Whoever wins the first road game is probably going to be the NBA champion, unless he just goes 7. What do both teams need? I'm going to ask you guys, what do both teams need to do? I'm going to start with Milwaukee Bucks, and I'm going to start with you, Steve. What does Milwaukee need to do to win Game 5?
Man, they have to keep the tandem of Middleton and Giannis hot. But here, if they're going to improve on anything, they have to get a consistent offensive punch from Holiday. Yeah. His defense on Chris Paul has been well documented and spoken on over the past couple of days. If they can get a 20 to 25 point performance from Holiday on top of great games from Middleton and Giannis, that's going to be the key, in my opinion, for a Game 5 victory on the road in Phoenix. It's going to be important, and you consider too that they're traveling, from the East Coast to the West Coast. They're actually gaining time by doing that little time travel. They get a little bit longer of a day, but they have to consider the fact that Holiday has got to be a bigger emphasis on the offensive end. Defensively, he just needs to keep doing what he's doing. But if they can get, a 20, 22 point game from him, that's going to be key for them getting a Game 5 victory.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with that. They need to. I think they found some good spots for him. But they definitely need to figure out a way for him to be more consistent at offense. Like I said, I think they keep their offensive rhythm going as well because he's also another scorer and ball handler to go along with Kris Middelton. And Edgar, to you the same question. What do you think Milwaukee need to do to win Game 5 in Phoenix?
Well, I was kind of the same thing that Steven said. I think Jrue Holiday and Kris Middelton need to show up on the road. I don't think they've been very consistent scoring-wise on the road, and that's put the burden on Giannis to have to score 40 over there in Phoenix twice. So I think if either, at least maybe one of them, even if it's not both of them, even if one of them shows up, drops like a 20 to 30-point game and takes off that scoring load of Giannis, I think that would be a tremendous help. The role players have to step up a little bit more too. They got to try to contain Chris Paul and Booker as best as they can because obviously both of them are going to feed off that crowd energy.
Right.
And they also need to do a better job at not being down so big so early, especially on the road. Like try to keep it relatively close. Maybe a little, maybe if it's a 10-point lead, but don't go down like 14, 15, 20.
Right.
Because that's just another big ladder that you have to climb from. Like make it a bit more manageable once you hit that fourth quarter, so you don't have to exert that much energy trying to make a comeback.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with that. And just speaking of Milwaukee's role play, I think Pat Connaughton is one of their more important players, especially as a shooter and as a defender. I know he's not, like I said, he's not a lockdown defender, but he does give you effort on that wing against their best scorers and their best playmakers. But if they can find a way to keep him getting some open shots and some open dunks, that'll definitely help make a difference and keep Bobby Portis in the rotation going into Game 5 as well. And I'm going to start with you.
And
go ahead.
Real quick, John. One thing I was just thinking of, it popped into my head, something that Milwaukee can do to get Holiday some easy buckets. And I know CP3 is a great defender, but I know that Holiday is a bigger body, right? One thing I would love to see for Milwaukee to do is get Holiday on some guard post up against Chris Paul, because they have the personnel to do that. If you can get Giannis throwing in an entry pass, that's going to be hard for a defender to pick off. One, you have floor spacing between Lopez, Tucker and Middleton. Get an entry pass in there to Holiday to see if he can get CP3 into some foul trouble or just get an easy bucket.
Nah, yeah, hey, that's a good point. That's why you Stevie Wonder. You're the Wonder Kid. You just come up with this stuff on the spot, man. And that is a good point. Like, get Drew some easier looks, even if that's just starting at the elbow, to where he's already at a good, comfortable spot to drive, or maybe even get some mid-range shots. Because Chris Paul is a shorter player, although he is a good defender. So that is a defender. That is a great defender. You're right. That is a good point, Steve. Like I say, Edgar, over to you. What do you think Phoenix need to do to pick up this Game 5 victory at home?
I think Chris Paul and Devin Booker need to play better, especially Chris Paul. I mean, the last 3 games he hasn't, no disrespect, but the last 3 games he hasn't really been the same Chris Paul that he was showing us throughout the playoffs. I think he's forcing the issue a bit. He's having some weird turnovers where, like, you could see like he's just trying to force it there. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he's a bit tired given his age. I know it's the NBA Finals, and you want to say, oh well, he must have crazy adrenaline going through him, but he's an older guy, and he's had a huge load on his shoulders this season, so he might be a little bit tired. Maybe those injuries are starting to catch up with him a little bit, but he has to show up. This is where like you make the money. Like, regardless of all of that, you have to put that in the back burner and like play better. Even if all that stuff is bothering you, just try to make better decisions on the offense. Don't get caught up with like not playing well. There's always the next play and whatnot. And just, they need to do a better job at trying to stop Giannis too. It's easier said than done. You try to build a wall, but you got to try to find some way to slow him down. I don't know what that way is, but hey.
You're right. You're right. You definitely have to find another way, because I think that wall defense isn't really hurting Milwaukee this year as much as it's been hurting them in previous playoffs, because they're figuring out other ways to score on that by taking Giannis off the ball and putting him closer to the basket, whether that's the elbow or that shallow corner right there where it's basically him and DeAndre Ayton one-on-one, and he can beat them baseline every time. But to your point, Chris Paul does have to kind of stop forcing the issue a tad bit on offense, because that is where some of those turnovers are coming from, and just bad offensive possessions. And if he can limit some of that in the fourth quarter, that is going to make a big difference, in especially if it's a close game. Real quick shout out to my Canadian cousin Ken. What's going on? Glad to see Ken in the building. All right, over to you real quick. Over to you, Steve. What do you think Phoenix need to do to pick up a Game 5 victory?
Oh man, it's tough, because a lot of the things that Edgar pointed to, they're all true. And like Edgar also said, a lot of them are easier said than done. You can't not make Chris Paul tired, because he's going to have to be a huge focal point on both sides of the ball. We just talked about the defensive side. Obviously, he's going to have the ball in his hand a lot, and he's going to be, having Ayton and others set screens for him. And he's a smaller dude. He's an older dude, and he's going to be getting a lot of contact. So it's you got to put him in situations maybe to where he's more off ball, kind of what he and Harden was doing in Houston, and let Booker cook. And even on our show, one of the things that I mentioned about Booker is that, like kind of Kobe Bryant, a guy who he grew up idolizing and, had a decent relationship, as he was an NBA player.
Right.
He could be kind of victim of the moment. You know what I mean? Like if he's putting up these 40-point games and someone has to do it, but does he have to be at every play? Are there certain plays like what he tried to do with Ayton to where he can make the right play, make the right read, but then also execute it? So, if I'm Milwaukee, one thing I'm trying to do is I want Devin Booker to make all the decisions. I don't want Chris Paul making the decisions because Booker might be feeling himself. He's a younger dude still, he's going to be susceptible, maybe feeling himself a little bit and trying to force the issue. Where Chris Paul, we've seen these low scoring output seasons from him and even in the playoffs, but he makes the right read. So that's something that Phoenix is going to have to kind of counteract is who can they have to help make plays? Because Milwaukee has 3 dudes who are capable of making excellent decisions with the ball in their hand. Phoenix really only has 2. Cam Payne is the scorer coming off the bench, and he's really the only other decision maker. Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, they're great ancillary pieces. They're not decision makers. So it's hard where you have to go against 3 and you only have 2. They got to find the right balance, and that's going to be key to them. And keeping Ayton interested and involved in the offense while doing that, that's important.
Yeah. Let me just say this real quick. Because I forgot. Aside from, Chris Paul's age, which a lot of people have questioned forever, and, the injuries that he's sustained during the playoffs and the playing time, big shout out to Drew Holiday because he's also one of the big reasons why Chris Paul's been struggling these last 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
Because Drew Holiday, he's lockup. Like this guy's relentless on defense. You watch him, he hounds you. He's a big bodied guard, and he's been chasing Chris Paul around. He doesn't care. He doesn't care if Chris Paul is like the point guard. He's been playing him like he's anybody else on defense.
No, definitely. And that is what Drew Holiday does best. Like even going back to his high school days, he was always going to defend and he was always going to be a smart decision maker with the ball in his hand. But just the Phoenix, like you were saying, Steve, they do need to figure out who else can kind of make a couple of plays for him. It doesn't have to be the consistent playmaking, but somebody else has to make a play for somebody. And DeAndre Ayton has to figure out a way to stay involved in the game, whether that's on Muncy keeping them engaged offensively or him just not being in foul trouble, which has kind of been Phoenix's problem the last couple of games. I know everybody's saying Devin Booker had 7 fouls because he did. You got to call it. You got to call it. They didn't call it, so whatever. But they, I did see 9 as well, Edgar. Like I did see 9 as well. But you have to figure out a way to keep DeAndre Ayton engaged in the offense, especially like say with Brook Lopez switches on those pick and rolls up top. That means it's a smaller defender on him. He's got to figure out a way to make it work. Like say Chris Paul got to do what he does and just be the point guard that he is and make good decisions. And Muncy has to keep everybody involved and keep everybody engaged and let them understand what the stakes are right now. Like they do have a young team outside of Jay Crowder and Chris Paul, but let's go. If we can get it now, let's get it now. Let's not think about next year or next game or whatever. Let's go get this game and let's get this championship this year. I want to say thank you guys for joining in with me. I want to give you both a chance to let people know where they can find you at. I want to start with you, Stephen. Let people know where they can find you and everything you do at.
Well, thank you for letting me be an honorary Hooper today. I really appreciate getting to link up with y'all. I don't know if I've ever been on a discussion where it's just been, John Edgar and myself, but I've really enjoyed this morning. So thank you so much. It's been an honor and a privilege. Y'all all do great work. As for me, you can find me at Stephen BTG. That BTG stands for Breaking the Game, which is the NBA podcast that I host. I'm going to be recording an episode later tonight. It's going to be kind of covering the same thing that we just talked about today with a finals recap. We're going to be talking about some of the coaching changes that have happened, one that's rumored to be happening, and a couple trades that are out there in the ether. And I'm probably going to be plugging my NBA draft stuff that I've just been posting out on Twitter this whole time. So if you want to learn more about Breaking the Game and kind of what I do, you can find me anywhere podcasts are available at Breaking the Game. You can also catch me on Dash Radio every Monday. Got a new time now. It's going to be from 10 to 11. So stand by because Dash Radio is going to be off the ball Mondays. So from 10 to 11, you're going to have me From 11 to 12, you're going to have Mo Murphy, host of the Up and Flame show. And then closing out the 3-hour block party is our president of the Off the Ball Network, Chris LeBron, on the Off the Ball pod from 11 to noon. So stand by for Off the Ball Mondays. It's going to be a great time.
Definitely. And Edgar, you want to do the same? Let people know where they can find you and everything you do.
Oh yeah, just gotta say it was great being on the show this morning. I mean, I woke up, I saw the message, and it was like, let me hop on with my favorite.
I appreciate that, really, man.
Yeah, I had to hop on even though you're a Hawks fan, but that's okay. I still love you guys.
We all have problems.
I still love Steve. I love watching you guys in the morning. It's great. I love commenting when I can and whatnot every Friday. You can find me at New Tape City, new_tape_city. That's my personal Twitter account. That's where I post most of my thoughts. Sometimes you get some random stuff, you get soccer stuff, you get a lot of Knicks stuff, a lot of NBA stuff, and then you could also go to the Off the Ball Network official account at OTB_network. That's where we get a lot of the social media stuff going, like the shows and the links to the shows and breaking news and whatnot. So yeah, go on down and check that out. Make sure you check out everybody else's podcasts. They're all great shows, great content. You won't hate anything. You'll love everything you see, everything you hear.
Definitely.
And go to offtheballnetwork.com for all of your sports needs as well.
Definitely. Like I said last week, we gonna be our new favorite 4-letter network real soon. Just keep paying attention. Once again, I appreciate both of you guys for jumping on. I know it was kind of last minute, but I really do truly appreciate it, both of y'all. This was a great episode. I like talking to both of y'all on here and on the timeline, which I know we'll be doing throughout the day. But of course, every Friday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, you can find us here doing the Hoopers Morning Run on the Off the Ball Network's Facebook page, our Twitter page, and our YouTube page. You can also catch us on Monday nights on the Dash Radio from 8 to 9 for the Hoopers Hour. And you can, anywhere podcasts available, you can catch us: Apple, Pandora, Spotify, iHeartRadio. It's so many more. I can't think of all of them. But once again, shout out to my great co-host, Stevie Wonder, Edgar from New Tape City. This was the Hoopers Morning Run. We appreciate you guys for watching us. So peace out.
Much love, everybody.
Peace.